One spring morning, I noticed a dozen people walking through my fields. They were marking the grass with orange paint. When I asked what they were doing, they said they were setting up for the Ho's annual lake festival. I told them politely they were on private land. Their lake was on the other side of the tree line. But they insisted Karen had given permission. When I called her, she answered with that condescending tone only a true Ho tyrant can master. "Oh, don't be so uptight," she said. "It's a community event. You should be thankful people want to enjoy your property." I told her again, "Get them off my land." She hung up. The next day, I found stakes driven into my soil, banners reading "Welcome to Lakeside Ho Summer Bash," and signs advertising vendors, live music, and fireworks. I pulled them up immediately and called the sheriff's office. When deputies arrived, they shrugged. "It's a civil matter," one said. "Take it up in court." Karen must have taken it as a green light, because 2 weeks later, things escalated beyond belief. 7 buses of partiers. On the morning of the so-called festival, I was drinking coffee when I heard engines roaring down the gravel road. I looked outside and nearly dropped my mug. 7 full-size charter buses were rolling toward my pasture. Behind them came food trucks, DJs, and a bounce house trailer. Within half an hour, nearly 400 people were spilling onto my property, dancing, drinking, and trampling the grass. I ran out shouting, "This is private land. You're trespassing." Most of them ignored me. One guy handed me a wristband and said, "Don't worry, man, we paid the Ho." They said it's all set. Karen arrived moments later in a sun hat and designer sunglasses, waving like a queen. "Isn't this wonderful?" she yelled over the music. "Bringing people together." I was furious. "You're trespassing. Every single person here is trespassing." She smirked. "Then call the cops. I already spoke to the county this area's part of our Ho zoning. You can't stop us." That was the final straw. The sheriff returns. I didn't waste time. I called 911 again, this time demanding the sheriff himself. When he arrived, I showed him my deed, my boundary maps, and decades of tax receipts. The bus parking area, the stage, the vendor tents, all of it was squarely on my land, not the Ho's. The sheriff called his legal liaison, then walked straight to Karen. "Ma'am," he said, "you're trespassing on private property." Karen laughed in his face. "No, officer, this is community property. These maps must be wrong." He replied coldly, "These maps come from the county assessor's office." When she refused to shut down the event, he began clearing the crowd. It took hours. People booed, some yelled at me, and a few even tried to fight the deputies. By sundown, the place looked like a battlefield. Crushed grass, broken fences, and beer cans everywhere. But the real reckoning hadn't even started yet. The aftermath. The next week, I got a letter from Karen, not an apology, but a bill. She demanded I pay half of the festival expenses since, according to her, my land benefited from the exposure. I laughed so hard I nearly tore the paper in half. Instead, I handed it to my attorney. He filed 2 complaints, criminal trespassing and property damage, with an additional civil suit for cleanup costs. The sheriff's report backed every word. Drone photos showed the buses parked squarely on my side of the line, and dozens of witness statements confirmed it. When Karen received the summons, she called me, screaming, "You can't sue me. I represent the Ho." I told her calmly, "You're about to represent yourself in court." The courtroom showed down. 3 months later, we were in county court. Karen showed up with an entourage of board members, her husband, and a lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The judge, an older man known for his no-nonsense rulings, read the file silently for several minutes before asking, "Mrs. Miller, did you organize an event on the plaintiff's property?" Karen crossed her arms. "That property has always been part of the Ho community area. The maps are confusing." The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Miller, the maps are crystal clear. The boundary line is legally recorded and predates your hoe by 40 years. Her lawyer tried to interject, but the judge cut him off. Your client led a crowd of hundreds onto private land. That is not confusion. That's trespassing on a massive scale. Karen tried to defend herself. It was a harmless festival. The judge slammed his gavel. Harmless? You caused property damage, violated state trespass laws, and endangered public safety. The sheriff had to clear the crowd. You're lucky this isn't a larger charge. The verdict. The ruling came swift and brutal. The judge found Karen personally liable for criminal trespass, property damage, public endangerment due to unauthorized event hosting. She was sentenced to 6 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay $87,000 in damages and cleanup fees. The hoe tried to cover her costs, but the court clarified, these actions were undertaken outside hoe authority. Mrs. Miller acted alone. That line broke her. She burst into tears right there in the courtroom. The fallout. Within weeks, the hoe board held an emergency meeting and removed her as president. Their insurance company refused to cover her fines. She ended up selling her house to pay off the judgment. Meanwhile, I rebuilt the fences, reseeded the grass, and installed surveillance cameras at every corner. The sheriff's office even used the case in their annual legal training, labeling it the Hoe Festival fiasco. Neighbors started waving at me again, quietly, carefully, as if they didn't want to be next on my lawsuit list. Karen, on the other hand, moved out of the county entirely. Rumor says she now lives in a small apartment in another state, avoiding anything with the letters hoe. The lesson. That whole ordeal taught me something. People like Karen believe authority is power, that they can invent rules, redraw maps, and bully whoever stands in their way. But property law doesn't care about arrogance. The boundary line doesn't move because someone feels entitled. When you stand your ground, literally and legally, truth eventually wins. Now, whenever I walk by my lake and see the new private property, trespassers will be prosecuted sign gleaming in the sun, I smile. Because I know that no matter how many buses Karen sends next time, the law will always be parked on my side.